This is the most important and crucial period of your lives, for what you do now and what you decide now at this age may well determine which way your life shall go. And the question is whether you have a proper, a solid, and a sound blueprint. And I want to suggest some of the things that should be in your life's blueprint. Number one in your life's blueprint should be a deep belief in your own dignity, your own worth, and your own somebodyness. Don't allow anybody to make you feel that you are nobody. Always feel that you count. Always feel that you have worth. And always feel that your life has ultimate.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're watching this. This is your man, Brian HRap B. Williams, coming to you live and direct again. This is End of the Bench Media. Thank you for tapping in. Hit that like, hit that share. Do everything you can to support the movement. Thank you for commenting after the show has been over. It is greatly appreciated, and it helps, it helps, it helps. Thank you for the new subscribers as well. Every time somebody subscribes that's new, I really appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to my parents, Dolores and John. Without them, there would be no me. There would be no podcast. You would be watching something else. Thank you. Now, today's episode is the disrespected Dr. King. And you see on the thumbnail where you see a young lady by the name of Sexy Red. And Sexy Red is standing there slow dancing. Or it is a CGI, computer-generated image of her slow dancing with Dr. King. And it looks relatively provocative. Well, the great Dr. Bernice King stood up and said, this is disrespectful to my father. He's not here to defend himself. It's disrespectful to my family. And it's disrespectful to the legacy of both. Now, I'm not on here to denigrate young lady Sexy Red. I'm on here to bring this to our attention. There's always two things happening. There's always two things happening. You ever notice that when something like Sexy Red comes to the forefront, we looking to the left. We're looking to the left at Sexy Red. Meanwhile, on the right-hand side, the government is doing something different. I'm going to address the government first and foremost, and then we'll come back to Sexy Red and the legacy of the great Dr. Martin Luther King and the legacy of our community. On the other hand, you had one President, Donald J. Trump, signing executive orders to state that diversity, equity, inclusion should be done away with. And he says, according to the President of the United States of America, diversity, equity, inclusion is discrimination for all people. He did away with a portion of the Civil Rights Act, that employment discrimination, contractual discrimination, meaning if you're a minority contractor, you should get an equal opportunity to get in this instead of the good old boy network. Again, another reason you should be voting. So these things can never be put through. But it's an executive order, which means if we continue to focus on our community and the protection of our community, these things won't affect us long term. And he also don't want people with disabilities to get any advantages or equal opportunities, which is insane. But he says that's discrimination against all. Basically, I want rich white men to continue to control this country. Therefore, people like myself can do what we want to do when we want to do it. We'll continue to have control because we no longer have the numbers. Let's just be honest. See, this is also disrespect to one Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and all the people that worked alongside him, the Malcolm X's, the Fannie Lou Hamers, the Dorothy Chisholms, the Whitney Youngs, so forth and so on, even going back as far as A. Philip Randolph and Ralph Bunche and others. See, this is the problem. We have too many opportunities in which foolishness can distract us while the real issues are really going on. Is this going to really, really, really affect us? Yes, it is. But guess what? 100 years ago, you had multimillionaires. Like, we all know Madam C.J. Walker, but do you know who Annie Malone is? Look her up, Addie Malone. She's the person who put Madam C.J. Walker on. She was born in the late 1800s. I think she died in like 56 or 47, one or the other. Reason I know, the reason I know of her because I've done the research. It's my thing. History is my thing. History may not be your thing, but history needs to be your thing. See, while again they create distractions, Snoop Dogg, and then he signs an executive order that does away with 78 things that benefited us in just the Biden-Harris administration. This guy is a white nationalist. This guy's doing everything he can to bring us back to the 60s, the 1860s, the early 1860s, pre-1865, 1860s. This guy is a detriment to humanity. And the fact that we don't know these things, the fact that we're easily distracted, and the fact that we don't realize every time he does away with something, that means the great Dr. Martin Luther King, the great Malcolm X, the great Fannie Lou Hamer, the great Medgar Evers, and literally tens of thousands of other Black people in this country, their legacy is being disrespected. We can no longer have this disrespect. We can no longer be easily distracted with these devices in our hands, or these devices that we're just watching on right now, or however we're operating throughout the United States of America. Entertainment is entertainment. News is news. Periodicals are periodicals. And then they all need to be re-separated and refocused. We can no longer have our young people comfortable putting something online that looks or could be disrespectful. We can no longer ignore the fact that white nationalism has taken over the United States federal government. They're going to do everything they can to put us in what we call in urban areas a trick bag. Yes, I'm using urban terms because I want you to understand. I want to grab your attention, and I want you to understand. I want you to understand how people in New Orleans 20 years ago with the Hurricane Katrina, they're still reeling from that. If they didn't have millionaire relatives, or they didn't have the capital, they still are fighting or lost land that their families fought for and died for, and people were denigrated for, and they had to fight off people like the Ku Klux Klan and things of that nature for. About people in the Southeast and the Mid-East with the hurricane this last winter, or this last fall, destroyed their property, and insurance companies are being allowed to do what they can. And the latest thing with this fire hurricane. Yeah, it's a hurricane that was made of fire with 100-mile-per-hour winds that burned down a lot of lands. 13,000 people lost their homes. Do you understand that there's enough people in this country that look like you and I, that we can come together and help our brothers and sisters who are in distress every time something happens? We don't need people like Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and other bigots, in my point of view, that are attempting to continue to oppress us because we've bought into this thing called the United States of America. What we can do is have Black America, and we can support us unabashedly, unashamed to do it, and we can focus on us. Understand, if we don't start focusing on us, we will continue to suffer, which leads me to the suffrage of the embarrassment of people like Sexy Red, who's been duped into believing your body is a tool to earn. Look, that people call pornographic stars, there's people call sex workers, and they use their body to get where they need to be. And I'm not knocking anybody or any way you earn your money, but that's called adult entertainment. It shouldn't be at the behest of a young person to show up and denigrate herself sexually, and all her things to be about sexual orientation, come from a sexual orientation. Talk about orifices in her body and her and naming lip gloss and things and like that. After that, you can do those things. There's a sex toy industry that makes billions of dollars on an annual basis. But what I want us to understand is we need to start this is why we need to start harboring our children, protecting our people, and then letting them know that being sexual is not the only way you can make it entertainment. Denigrating yourself or reducing your pride is not the only way you can get $1 million. See, we've been duped into believing the bag, as I stated all week, the bag is the ultimate goal. But guess what? You can get rich in this country without exposing yourself, denigrating yourself, or being some form of sex pot. This is why we need to set up standards. We need to stop saying things like, I can't tell you what to do. Well, I can inform you. I can't make you do anything, but we need to present to our young women and our young men, your pants off your butt. You know what I'm saying? After every sentence, not being able to articulate cogent sentences, it's not the coolest thing in the world. Am I telling you not to use slang? Because I use slang on my podcast. I use slang right here on this platform. But you know what? The way I speak to my man Big Illinois, my man Mo, my man Big P, and others is not the way I speak on this program. And you can call it code switching. You can call it whatever you like. But in a setting in which I want to attract more people, I speak to the best of my abilities. And in a setting in which I'm relaxed and I'm talking to my friends and we're having a good time, it's a totally different set of words that I use. I use profanity. Occasionally, I might use the N words, which I'm attempting to eradicate at this point from my entire vocabulary. But it's a more urban hip hop kind of vernacular. But what we need to do is educate our young people. Young lady, you don't need to whore yourself out for money, because you have the ability to be a poet, and you can rhyme and rap about other things besides sexual activity. Young man, being on the street corner is not cool. Going to jail is not cool. Using drugs is not cool. Using firearms and projecting violence against other people that look like you, that's not cool. And we need to start frowning upon those things. That's my life story. You cannot tell me that your entire life has been immersed in violence, death, destruction, and drugs, alcohol, and other things that are detrimental to you and your community. I know what that world looks like. I grew up in the midst of it, and I've never participated in it. What I want us to understand is this: the reason things happen to us and the disrespect is presented to us in this fashion is because we have not embraced our past. We think the only thing that's in our past is slavery. No, slavery, if you looked at a clock and used the time of the world, and if slavery restarted at midnight, which starts every day, you wouldn't get to 1203. You wouldn't get to 1201 with the history of Black America, coast to coast, border to border, from sea to sea. That's how small of a blip slavery is. We need to start focusing on people like Fannie Lou Hamer, Dorothy Chisholm, the aforementioned Annie Malone. How about people like Thurgood Marshall? How about people like Paul Laurence Dunbar? How about people like Granville Woods? How about other people in the history of the United States of America who have invented things, who have cured things, who have done things that make our community set up with nothing but pride? Has there been pain and trauma on this continent called North America? Indeed, it has been. But we don't need to only focus on that. But you know what? You need to talk about that pain as well. Because you know what that pain does? It angers you. It should. And it should motivate you. And it should motivate you to delve deeper into things. You're like Pauli Murray, one of the greatest legal minds in the history of the United States of America, a Black woman, Pauli Murray. We need to introduce the Sexy Reds and the what's the young lady name from Memphis? I can't think of her name. Glorilla. They need to understand that those are some of the great those rhymes that you consistently compute in your head and put onto music. You need to think about those women as well. You need to start listening to people like the young lady from South Carolina. I can't think of her name right now. I can see her face. She's a rapper as well. She has a whole album constructed about Black women in history. We need to educate our people. I heard this guy named Jason Lee. He's one of the more popular content creators on the internet speak about we need, according to Kanye, a guy who doesn't read, mind you, we need to do away with Black History Month because all we know about is the pain. Well, that means you have never opened up a book, Mr. Lee. See, you're part of the problem. We can no longer use Black history as some contentious point. It is a point of pride. Next month, it's the celebration. It is a 28-day and sometimes 29-day celebration of our history. But guess what? The guy, Carter G. Woodson, who invented it, who started Black History Week to celebrate Frederick Douglass. That's why Black History Week and month is in February. They didn't give us February. We took it because Frederick Douglass, one of the original abolitionists, is not in our community. His birthday, he took on the birthday of February 14th because when he was born into enslavement, they didn't document his birthday. So when Carter G. Woodson created Black History Week, that morphed into Black History Month. And if you want to read his book, it's called The Miseducation of the Negro. He mentions that if you can only have 30 days to celebrate the history of a community, you don't need to celebrate that history. There's websites that will send you an email about Black history every day, every single solitary day. This is what we need to be building upon. Again, I'm going to mention this for the 5th time this year. We need to get in contact with these people who run these churches, because on Saturdays, we need to be dropping off our children, and we need to be working with the people at these churches so we can enforce them to some of that money we're giving up. We need to be having them do some form of Black history campaign and educating our children about how great we were in the world as well as in this country. How we have literally saved this country time and time again. How a black man designed Washington, D.C., how Black people constructed Atlanta and reconstructed Atlanta after the burning, how a Black man potentially won the world war, helped win the world wars, how Black men helped invent the internet, how Black women helped the space program, how Black people invented the concept of the Ring doorbell. We have to stop allowing people to frame who and what we are into the world that we live in. I understand that you may not understand where I'm coming from with this, because you have been indoctrinated into being a citizen. But you are a citizen of Black America before you're a citizen of any place on this earth. And then you are part of the African diaspora. And then you are a part of the United States of America. If you don't understand why I'm saying that, all I want to ask you is this. Why is it that the Black Panther Party of Self-Defense is labeled to this day a terrorist organization, but the Ku Klux Klan is not? Why is it that I have never heard a joke about the World War II Holocaust, but we have jokes about slavery? I've never heard any other derogatory terms used by any other group asked, why can't we use it? But people ask us, why can't we say the words that denigrate us? See, if you know your history and you know the pain, give you an example of the pain. The fact that my grandmother, Maddie Mae Williams, born Maddie Mae Liggins, has property in the state of Alabama, but my grandfather and her had to leave the state. They got property there right now, but they had to leave the state. And not only did they leave the state, my grandfather, who could not read or write, came to Illinois, built a infrastructure for his family, and brought up my father and his sisters and brothers, his older sisters and brothers and his younger sisters and brothers. And then he invited other members of the family, because guess what? He was on his own since age 9 due to abject violence. See, this is why you need to understand who and where you're from and what is going on in your family. Then you'll understand when somebody asks you, why can't I say the N-word? It should be something that mentally incites violence inside your body. And when people start understanding to play with me or to ask me a question of that nature may inflict some form of violence against you, then we won't have these problems. We can no longer have people post pictures like on the thumbnail with Sexy Red having a provocative picture with Dr. King. She said she just saw it online and she reposted it. Another problem. Again, it was a distraction while the president did what he did. But you know what? Would you want someone to post a picture of your grandfather, your deceased grandfather, great-grandfather, grandmother, father, uncle, aunt, or anybody who you cared about in a provocative way? Now, it's just a slow dance, but Dr. King was looking at her in a provocative way. This hints towards infidelity. The only reason we think about infidelity is because some cross-dressing dude who used to run the FBI named J. Edgar Hoover, who was suspected of being a member of the LGBTQ community and was embarrassed about who he really was, he put those stories out there. We can no longer have anybody, when you say Dr. King, you mention infidelity. You need to be mentioning this guy died to make the world better for his family and our community. He didn't die. He didn't do that. He intentionally died. Someone murdered him. I'm not using words like assassination. Someone murdered the great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Somebody murdered the great Malcolm X and his family, and Coretta Scott King and Betty Shabazz continued to become Dr. Betty Shabazz. In 4 days, the 8th of April, guess what Coretta Scott King was doing? She was continuing to lead a march for the Poor People campaign before her deceased Love of her life was placed in the ground. She didn't know what she was going to do with her children, but you know what? She continued to fight. So Coretta Scott King could continue to fight, dealing with all that grief and wondering how her children were going to live. We need to start defending these people. With that being said, we can no longer be disrespected and denigrated. I'm tired of it, Black folks. I don't want to be friends with everybody. I want to be friends with you. And if anybody who wants to be friends with us, they're welcome to be our friends, but we're not reaching out for friends anymore. It's time for us to be friends with each other. We need to be friends. Look, you can't pick your relatives, but you can pick your family. So let's make this family, this communal family, and get ourselves out of this foolishness. With that being said, I'll see you tomorrow at some point. This is A Few Minutes with HRap. It has been wonderful as usual. I need you to leave a comment. I need you to like and share this because, man, thank you to the people who've been liking, sharing, and commenting because y'all been doing a bang-up job. I really appreciate the people who have recently subscribed. Thank you. Have a good day. 2 fingers, 1 word. It's HRap, and you already know.
And it is necessary for those people who rule over us and who rule over African people the world over, if those people are to stay in power, they must destroy our ability to love each other in a healthy sort of way. This is why